Hi, this is Andrew Bryant, and I'm here with Dr. Marshall Goldsmith, ranked world's #1 coach, #1 leadership thinker, author of 40 books, 3 of which were New York Times bestseller. Thank you for giving us a few moments on the Self-Leadership Success Summit, Marshall.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
My pleasure. My first question for you, and I've asked most of my guests, is what does self-leadership mean to you?
Well, what it means is basically taking responsibility for your own development. In the same way as a coach, I try to help others achieve positive long-term change in behavior. When I coach people, largely they're responsible for their own growth and development. I'm not their parent, I'm not their father. They're mega successful people now. So I think it's a great concept. And also we're using it now with employee engagement, getting people to take responsibility for their own engagement rather than just waiting for the company.
Sure. This piece of ownership or responsibility or autonomy is the big buzzword. And so many people have given up that level of ownership. They want somebody else to take ownership for them.
Well, in fact, in the area of employee engagement, companies reinforce this.
Yeah.
They tell the employees, well, if you're not engaged, it must be our fault.
Yep.
Almost 100% of the talk on employee engagement is what can the company do to engage you. With almost 0% you have any responsibility for your own life. So I love what you're doing.
Thank you very much. And I love what you're doing because that concept of ownership is key to coaching. I mean, I've heard you speak many times. I'm always inspired by your speeches. And you very much say that you can't coach somebody that doesn't want to be coached, right?
Exactly. I tell my clients, I don't get paid if you don't get better, and I don't get paid because I'm a good coach.
Yeah.
I get paid because you're a fantastic client. Don't make it all about me.
Exactly. So what do you think the leverage point is for people to take ownership? I mean, is it some people either have ownership and they don't, or is there a transformation to say, I need to claim back my level of ownership?
Well, I'm a great believer in confidential feedback. So when I coach people, they get confidential feedback on how they're perceived by their direct reports, by their peers, perhaps their board members. And then I sit down, go over the report with them and say, all right, look in the mirror. Yep. Now, if you love everything you see, there's no use hiring me here. We're wasting time. On the other hand, are there areas where you think you can do better and the company agrees it would be great for you to improve? If so, then we have something to do.
We do. And that's the self-awareness piece, recognizing that there is a gap between where you're currently at and where your potential is to be.
That's right.
If you don't have that awareness that there's room for growth, then
why bother?
Why bother?
You know, I've learned I cannot help someone get better that's already perfect.
So you work a lot with senior leaders, and I've heard you say many times, don't get addicted to too much winning.
Right.
Could you just expand on that for me, please?
Well, any human, or in fact any animal, will replicate behavior that's followed by positive reinforcement. The more successful we become, the more positive reinforcement we get, and the more we replicate the same behaviors. When you're growing up, you're taking test after test after test after test after test. Your goal is to prove you're smarter than everyone else and you're more clever than they are. Nothing wrong with that. The problem is every time you get promoted into management, this becomes more and more dysfunctional. You have to quit winning all the time and let others win. And I'm not meaning you shouldn't win important things. What I mean is don't win small, trivial points. Don't prove you're smarter than everyone around you. Don't be that smartest person in the room. Be surrounded by the smartest people in the room. One of the great leaders that I coach said, achievers, it's all about me, and leaders, it's all about them. It's hard to make this transition from that great achiever where I have to win all the time, I have to be right, to that great leader where they're really focused on helping you be the hero.
Yeah, that hero thing is very important, and you shared a couple of years ago in Singapore talking about who are your heroes.
Right.
And I actually, if I might share, did that with my kids. I was
wonderful.
I was walking my 2 kids to the bus stop for the school bus in the morning. I said to kids, how can I be a better dad?
Yes.
My daughter said, well, you could get me a bigger bedroom. But my son said, you could come to more of my school things.
Sure.
And that very day he had a school swim meet and I had business meetings. But as a leader, I realized that my value was my son, and I canceled those meetings and I went to his swim meet. So thank you very much for challenging me to be a better human being in that moment.
Thank you.
That concept of who are your heroes and then how can you be more like them?
Right.
That's something you teach a lot. And
changed my life too.
So who are your heroes?
Well, my heroes tend to be, I was given this assignment, who are your heroes? My heroes are really kind and generous people who are great teachers. Peter Drucker, one of the great management thinkers of all time, Warren Bennis, Richard Beckhard, Frances Hesselbein, she's an amazing, amazing leader, Alan Mulally. These are people that really spent a lot of time and effort helping me, and by the way, never charged me one penny.
Right.
So kind and generous, as well as being great teachers. And now I'm adopting people myself, teaching them all I know for free, and as a small sign of recognition to the great people that helped me.
That's fantastic. That's a true pay it forward. One of my heroes is actually Muhammad Ali.
Yes, I'm from Louisville. I watched him box when he was a little boy.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. Well, he's some great stories, but I love what he says about, I don't trust people who don't treat the waiter nicely.
I agree.
Because if I was in that same position, and that changed my life, I always make sure, here in this very hotel, I've been making sure I tip the room service, and
well, actually, I wrote an article about that.
I
didn't know you were going to bring it up, but I wrote an article about that, and I've eaten at many Michelin 3-star restaurants. And the thing that I've learned is the waiters should be treated like a customer. Not just to be nice, you get better service that way.
You do.
And I remember the first time I ever went to a fancy restaurant, I was brought up very poor. I've never been to a nice restaurant before. And I said to the waiter in this top 10 New York restaurant, I said, you know, sir, I've never been to such a place. I have no idea what I'm doing. If you don't mind, I've made a lot of money today, so here's $100 for a meal and a tip, which back then was a lot of money. And I said, could you please bring me a nice $100 meal and explain to me about all the food?
Wow.
I kept track. He bought me a $150 meal.
That was a good investment. But,
well, I learned something. It wasn't just the money, it was the feeling.
Yeah.
And since then, I've been eating in many nice restaurants, and I don't know anything about food compared to these people. I mean, who am I to tell them about the food in their restaurant? And I'm not a Michelin 3-star chef. And I've learned that the more you treat people like customers and let them be the experts, don't show off, the better. The only bad service I've ever seen at a fancy Michelin 3-star restaurant, I went with a partner, unfortunately, who tried to act like a big shot.
Yeah.
It was embarrassing to me. Henry Kissinger was sitting right across from us, too. You know what I'm thinking? Henry Kissinger wants to act like a big shot. Hey, maybe he's deserved. You haven't. You're embarrassing me here. So that's a great, great analogy. I'm glad you used it.
Well, thank you. So my last question, as I appreciate your time, is we've talked about self-leadership. This is the Self-Leadership Success Summit. What does success mean to you?
Two things. Well, it means several things. I'm going to talk about two predominantly. I've done many programs in my house with retiring CEOs. Now, these are socioeconomically incredibly successful people. And we talk about what matters in life. Not that much. Number one is health. Take care of yourself. If you don't have your health, the rest of this stuff doesn't matter much at all. Number two, wealth, but it only matters to a degree that doesn't influence most people that I deal with. Once you get past that middle to upper middle class income level, there's almost no correlation between happiness and money.
Yeah.
It matters to a degree. Extremely poor people are not that happy. That's a myth. On the other hand, beyond that middle class level, it doesn't mean much. Then, beside health and wealth, you need to have great relationships with people you love. As you mentioned, your son. Very, very important. Assuming you have health, at least a middle class level of wealth, and great relationships with people you love, what matters? Two things. Happiness and meaning. Happiness can be seen as the process of life. I love what I'm doing. I get joy out of what I'm doing. It makes me happy. Meaning is the results. The results of what I'm doing matter to me. I think they're important. And the key is no one can define happiness for you but you. No one can define meaning for you but you. Those answers have to come from the inside, not from the outside. And our research on this that I've done with my daughter Kelly is very, very compelling. The higher percent of your life you spend engaged in activities that produce both simultaneous happiness and meaning, the better your life is. The more satisfied you are with life at work or at home.
Very good. That's a very succinct answer, and I know many of the people we've interviewed on the summit have all said that success is some level of choice or freedom around what they do and the ability to pay it back forwards, because when they're doing something for other people is actually when they feel the most happy.
Right.
And I see you doing that. You've worked tirelessly while we've been here at this conference in Mumbai, and I thank you for giving me this time on the summit. Marshall Goldsmith, thank you.
Thank you so much.